More than 500 people and 100 elephants die every year due to the conflict with each other, officials of the Environment Ministry said on Monday. Releasing the figures at an event ahead of World Elephant Day on August 12, the officials said interaction between humans and elephants have led to the death of both. As per the last census conducted in 2017, India is home to 30,000 elephants. Addressing the event, Union Environment Minister Prakash Javadekar said elephant conservation is vital as it balances the ecosystem. Elephants have to be kept in forests for which fodder and water augmentation program has been initiated. Minister also added that by next year results will start showing. In this edition of the Big Picture, we will analyze some best practices to tackle human-elephant conflicts. Joining me on the program today are Noel Thomas, IG, Project Elephant; Ashok Pai, former Chief Conservator of Forests, Uttarakhand; and Achintya Singh, wildlife photographer. Thank you to all my guests for joining me on this edition of The Big Picture. So, Mr. Thomas, let me start the program with you first. Let's talk about this best practices document that the Environment Ministry has come out with as far as dealing with human elephant conflict is concerned. What is the scale of the problem? What are some of the best practices that can be followed?
Yeah, basically the issue, as we all know, the human-elephant conflict is mainly due to the fragmentation of the habitat, and also due to the uh, various developmental activities that are going on, especially mining and road construction, railway expansion, and in addition, all the habitations, new and new habitations are coming up near to the forest area. So then what happens is the corridor, the elephant movement pathways are getting blocked or it's getting obliterated. So, and this leads to uh, conflict and uh, people also get around 100 people are getting 100 elephants are getting killed and more than 500 human beings are also getting killed every year. So we do take up various measures. The state forest departments are being advised to follow certain uh, standard operating procedures. They have been issued a set of guidelines and they can adopt whatever feasible to their locality and bring down the conflict. So basically, there are very good examples now in all over the country, depending upon the location. In South India, the biggest elephant habitat in the country and supporting around 50% of the elephant population. We have different models starting with the habitat improvement, increasing the food availability, increasing the water availability, preventing animals elephants from moving to the villages or the uh, habitations, using the rail fence, then using the standard age-old practice of elephant-proof trenches, then going for alternate cropping, using crops which are not liked by elephants, and again creating, uh, facilitating the movement of animals. So these are some of the measures being used in southern region, but in the most problematic region, that is the east central region, comprising of West Bengal, Jharkhand, Odisha, Chhattisgarh, and now in Madhya Pradesh also.
Hmm.
Basically, the issue in this region is uh, fragmentation, as I said earlier, the fragmentation of the habitat, especially for mining and infrastructure development. This was and colonization, increasing habitations, increasing townships, and all these things are resulted the blockage of the corridor, the passages, migratory pathways of the animals. So
Right.
this was brought in such a huge conflict situation, and it's increasing. But we can't say that it is increasing to much higher level. But more or less, the every year we are average of Arpana said earlier. Out of 100 elephants, around 70 elephants are dying in this region,
Sure.
in the east central region. And 70% of the elephants are also dying in this east central region. So this is, so we are, ministry is in touch with the state forest departments, and we are trying our level best to bring down, and using the best practices in other parts of the country, so
Okay.
that
Points.
the conflict can be reduced to a great extent.
Points taken. Let me take the points that you're making forward with the other panelists now. There are several measures that the government is taking to ensure that we decrease the conflict between humans and elephants, is what Mr. Thomas is suggesting. Mr. Pai, let me come across to you now. You work very closely with elephants, with animals, and in your role as chief conservator of forests, you've seen things from a very close quarters. So, what is the biggest challenge really as far as the conflict between elephants and humans are concerned, and what steps do you think need to be taken so that we can bring down the conflict?
In fact, there is no sort of a one solution fits all sort of a situation is not there. It varies from region to region, precisely because of the socioeconomic conditions and the physiography of the area, as well as the type of forest and the population of elephants which are habiting those regions. Given this situation, the one of the things which has been practiced across the world and in India is the physical barrier. Physical barrier in terms of fences, trenching. It could be fencing, could be of the electric fence, solar fencing, which is primarily the used for giving a shock so that elephants move away from the raiding the crops and creating conflicts. So also along the rail traffic fences, which is also called Armstrong fences or fence, that is also used at places to stop elephant from entering the railway track and getting accidentally killed. In addition to this one, there have been instances of the attempt to change the cropping pattern, but the problem there is that most of the people or the farmers residing in these vicinities are the small farmers who grow food for their own consumption, and making them change the cropping pattern is a Herculean task, because they grow what is economical for them or which gives the food security. There have been attempts in the world across to use the population management practices, which includes culling of elephant, for example, in the Kruger National Park and Zimbabwe, etc. But culling is not an option which has been exercised in India, and perhaps there are issues which needs to be debated before that kind of a measure can be thought of. But there are other measures with regard to the population management. Especially the contraception is one of the processes which may appear a bit expensive and time consuming, but that works. That has worked for human beings, that has worked for other animals. So why not elephants, even though it may be a bit expensive? Translocation of the animals from the areas which are densely populated and to the areas which are less populated by animals and the humans, and that could be also one of the things which in some places works, and that is how you manage the population. Now, coming to the issue of the growing more forage and food within the forest area, is a sort of a debatable issue for the simple reason that the food and forage has always been a limiting factor for population growth. And if you are providing more food and forage, that may not help in population management per se, and rather you may have to go in for the crops which within the forest, which may virtually make the forest a fodder forest for the elephants, and which would be again is a ecologically not a desirable thing. there are various options and mix of these things depending on the region where you have been trying to address these issues needs to be put in place. The propensity of the conflict of elephants and man is much more in the eastern India, West Bengal, Odisha, and Jharkhand than in other parts of the country, primarily southern India. There have been a large number of people getting killed in the West Bengal. I think between 2015 and 2018, about more than 300 people have been killed in West Bengal, equal number in Odisha. So also elephants get killed in the process. So the measures when we talk about the by manipulating the natural processes may be counterproductive in the long run. That needs to be weighed carefully before we think of. But
Sure.
what appears to be the case is that the population management is one of the key issue which needs to be addressed based on the carrying capacity of the area or the propensity of the conflict which is happening in those areas.
Right.
So, yeah.
Okay, points taken. Now, Achintya, how important is it to deal with and to take care of the habitats really as far as the elephants live in as well, and ensure that elephant corridors too are maintained so that we see less contact between wild elephants and humans?
See, what we basically need to address the problem is that only 22% of the elephant habitat that is found is within our protected area network. The remaining elephant range lies outside in places which is now overrun by people. Also, elephants eat up to 300 kilograms of fodder in a day. And they're always looking for new food sources, more nutritional food sources. And their herds, they migrate, they go from one national park to another. And in the process, the pre-existing corridors, which are now overrun by people and are slowly converting into farmland, are all farms. So those farms are then further crop raided. Like recently in the last 40 to 50 years, there has been no reports of wild elephants from central India and Bandhavgarh. But elephants have traveled from Orissa to Madhya Pradesh. Like crossing 2 states, they have reached Bandhavgarh National Park. Now they are staying here. In the last 10 years, there's the elephants staying at Dudhwa Tiger Reserve have become resident because of the sugarcane farms present near Dudhwa National Park.
Okay. All right, then taking the discussion forward, Mr. Thomas, we've very clearly established over the last 12 minutes or so that majority of the problem really lies in eastern India. What is it so different about eastern India? Why is it the conflict is far more in eastern India than anywhere else in the country?
Basically, as I explained, the one is the developmental activities. Mining is the major. Then network of roads and rails. So that is also a major reason. Then creation of more townships and habitations are basically encroachments. People are moving more and more inside or good elephant area. Then blockage of the, as I said, the blockage of the passage of the corridors, elephant corridors. So it all have contributed to increasing conflict. So basically, increasing cultivation. As my co-panelist said, that 150 years back, all the Madhya Pradesh they had a very good elephant population. Then they moved ahead to the Chota Nagpur area. Then now, because increasing mining activity, developmental activity, colonization, etc., in Jharkhand, Odisha. So typically, again, they are coming back to Chhattisgarh, this northern part, Sarguj, those areas. The forest areas are not very rich as in South India because basically sal and other associated species. We know that sal forests are not very good for elephant, especially as a fodder. And the bamboo forest is degrading. Bamboo used to be a very good fodder for elephants. And once the people started moving inside or near the boundaries of forest area or creating enclosures within the forest areas and start cultivating. So naturally, the elephants will be looking for a easy food rather than going for the forest bamboo and other things. They come out and have the rice, then or pumpkin, sugarcane, plantain, and other things. So, because it is more of people going deep inside the forest, or more of encroachment, more of so in all these mining areas, you have townships. So,
Right.
more area is diverted for habitation, construction of townships, cities, etc. Roads have come, rail is there now. Many lines, double tie and other tracks are there for carrying the iron ore or bauxite. So, they all have resulted in increasing human-elephant conflict in this region. This is exactly the reason why it is less in South India. You won't see such sort of fragmentation. And you won't see such sort of degradation of the forest area. Of course, people are encroaching within or out, just outside the boundary of the forest. It's a problem in South India also. But
Sure.
large scale mining and other developmental activities, infrastructure development, road, rail, etc. are not there. South, especially in the elephant habitat.
Right. Okay. Points taken. Now, let me take the points that you're making forward with Mr. Pai. Mr. Pai, this issue of, as India grows, as India becomes an economic superpower, the aspirations of the people of the country to go up. So, how do you strike a balance? Because as the aspirations go up, there's bound to be more development, bound to be more infrastructure projects. How do you strike a balance between infrastructure and development and wildlife and ecology?
One of the things which is to be remembered is that as the economic development happens in a region, the people who are depending on the forest or living in the vicinity of the forest, their number goes down. As a result, the chances of conflict reduces. If you look at the cases of West Bengal and Odisha or Jharkhand, these are one of the least developed and highly populated districts, where the alternate economic opportunities for the people residing in the vicinity of the forest is very low. So it is a good thing that if there is a better economic opportunity, people would like to live the life of drudgery and move away. And urbanization is the other related, and people moving away from them and living in the urban areas where they have better economic opportunities or the employment opportunities would reduce that one. In addition to the aspirational part of it, where the linear projects happening, there are ways of doing it. For example, the elevated roads, elevated rail corridors, all these they provide without fragmenting the habitat further. They can meet the requirement of physical infrastructure as well as keep the movement of the wild animals without compromising it. The other options which have been practiced and worked to some extent is that, like in the case of Northeast Frontier Railways, have been using the bees' buzz, that the sound of the bees which rattles the elephants, they move away from that one. So they have been using it effectively. For example, in 2013, I learned that about 19 elephants were killed, and now that has come down to 10, and because of the use of this kind of a technology like the bee buzz by the North Frontier Railways. And similar other experiments which have been working well is the real-time tracking of the elephants through the radio collars or the chip inserted. That would help in forewarning the people and shooing away the elephants, etc. So the development and the ecological integrity can go hand in hand, provided all our decisions are driven by primarily the science and bit of pragmatism. And that, as I said, that the science should take the lead in our decision making rather than the emotions. the example of I would quote of Chila Motchur Wildlife Corridor, which has been declared free of human habitation. This is an example where it shows that if there is a will by voluntarily relocating and taking adequate other management measures, some of the corridors which were affecting coming in the way of free movement of the elephants can be addressed. So also the road which is being constructed between, rather expanded between Hardwar and Dehradun, the design is supposed to be having an elevated road so that this corridor of Chila Motichur also remains intact and integrity of that corridor is retained.
Right.
So these are certain sort of measures which are working well, and that shows that there are ways of meeting both the ecological requirements as well as the genuine aspirations of the people. But as I said elsewhere, that the wildlife management cannot be seen in isolation. That has to be seen in the entirety of the development of the communities and the people living in the vicinity of those protected areas, as well as the wildlife per se. So
Sure.
when sort of a complete picture is kept in mind and adequate measures are taken in a comprehensive manner, then perhaps we get more options and better solutions.
Okay. All right, Achintya, as far as elephants are concerned, they are known to travel vast distances in search of food and water. So does this also pose a challenge to the authorities, more so in a country like India, which is densely populated?
Of course, of course. See, since our corridors are a lot of corridors fall in non-protected areas, so the corridors are constantly being converted into farmland. Elephants are run by a matriarch, and her duty and responsibility is to learn routes of migrations over the years. And like absolutely all the elephants present in most regions migrate depending on the food and water availability. Mostly it's got to do a lot with seasons also. Like certain places, like where in summers they go somewhere else, in winters they're back again. Like the elephants were constantly migrating between Nepal and India at Dudhwa National Park. Then the corridor got disturbed from the Nepal area. There was illegal tree felling. There was agriculture in Nepal. There was conflict in Nepal. Chili bombs were being used. Then the elephants found a better food source in the farmlands of Lakhimpur Kheri. So instead of heading back to Nepal and using their own old migratory route, they started crop raiding in the Lakhimpur Kheri region. 500 elephants being affected 500 people being affected annually, and 100 elephants being affected annually is a pretty large number if you see it at a national scale.
Absolutely. Okay, time to get quick closing comments now from all my guests with the best way forward. I've got limited time, so in 1 minute each, starting first with you, Mr. Thomas.
As my co-panelists mentioned, that yes, we can have a sustainable development, but at the same time, we should implement. There are plans and programs when the infrastructure development is planned and designed. So we provide a lot of options, but unfortunately, that is not happening. So the agencies, railways or highways, they are very hesitant to implement the mitigation measures so that the animals are not affected. That is one issue. So it has to be while designing itself, they should go for avoiding such areas so that these issues will not come up. And again, in the existing linear infrastructures, they should go for retrofitting to the extent possible. That will also take care of the thing. Finally, I would say that it has to be a community-based mitigation of the conflict, because we have to take care of the communities and involve them in the mitigation measures and take their confidence and involve them in all the forestry activities, take care of their livelihood and provide enough compensation and for their loss of property, and provide adequate escalator for unfortunate deaths that are happening due to the conflict. I think
Right.
with all these things, I think we can manage the conflict to a great extent, so that
All right.
both human beings as the elephants will have coexistence in the country.
All right, Mr. Pai.
As I said, that science with pragmatism is the mantra. Science primarily dealing with the population management of the elephants and carrying capacity, how much a protected area network of our country, the forest can sustain the population of these animals, should be the guiding principles, and without too much manipulation of the natural way of limiting the populations, like the forage and food. And pragmatism with regard to the expecting the farmers to switch over to the crops which are not like with the elephants would not be pragmatic. So also the case that the rail or road network would not go on, that is also not pragmatic. But elevated roads or elevated railway tracks could be certainly the pragmatic way of looking at the issues without keeping the integrity of the ecological system or the corridors intact. So that is the way to go ahead. Science with the pragmatism is the mantra. That is the way to go in managing these conflict. You cannot bring the conflict to zero level, but it can be brought down to manageable level if you adopt this principle.
Okay. All right. And Achintya, close the show for us with your concluding remarks.
Yeah, so basically, I think that the problem of the elephant conflict is more food based and more migration route based. I think if migration routes, corridors are worked upon, invasive species of plants present in the national park are worked upon, and there is better fodder and food created for the animal in the existing national park, I think it will definitely be able to, if not deplete, at least curb the problem. Looking at what's been done in other countries, like what's been done in Africa. Earlier, they had a cull policy. Now they have opted not to do culling. With the contraceptives, there will be behavioral changes because elephants, like humans, teach their future generations as to what has to be done. They teach migration routes. They teach they teach what routes to take, where to find food, how to look for food. 15, 20 years of using contraception will get very severe behavioral changes with the existing population of elephants. So I think if corridors, if more space, pre-existing space is created, marked